Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by AJ Bialo, back again for another
Yay.
conversation. Either you enjoyed it or you were a glutton for punishment, as they say. um, you're just looking like so smiley. It's absolutely brilliant to see this.
It's 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 strange because I don't feel guilty about it. But ever since I am now done with my family, my adopted family, there's no more caretaking, there's no more calls at 2 in the morning, there's no more do this, do that, stop what you're doing, you got to do this. My life is now mine. And I don't miss them. I don't miss any of them.
Yeah,
I can just go on from here, and I'm getting a lot more work done writing wise too, because not so much poetry. I haven't really written any poetry since probably September or October last year, which is kind of strange because it's one of the things I usually
do you?
write a lot of, but there's been like nothing in my head that goes rhyming poetry, which is my thing. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I've been writing more stories. I've been going through and redoing old stories that I had that I think maybe I would like to publish now. Um, I did it's kind of funny because the day I buried my aunt on Halloween, kind of crazy in
Very.
itself. Um, well, it's like two pagans, interracial couple, interracial lesbian couple, in a Catholic church on Halloween for a high mass funeral going to the cemetery. And my wife decides to deck herself out all in black for Halloween. She has her whole, boots and the long, skirt with it's the whole puffy sleeve, she looked very pagan.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was different.
yeah. I bet it.
And when I got done with the funeral, I wanted to. I had never ever thought of doing anything like a autobiography. And there was a contest I noticed like back in August. The deadline was the 31st of October to submit. It's a woman's um, journal, online journal, and their in print journal. They're running a contest, which I don't usually do either, but it was various forms of autobiography. And when I started laying out my poetry and my short stories, they just kind of flowed along from actually, I named it Wednesday's Child, which was the last poem I wrote. It's actually two stanzas of eight. The first eight start the book, the last end the book. And it's about, the old saying, Wednesday's child is full of woe, since I was born on Wednesday. Um, and that was the last poem I wrote, but I just noticed everything that I've written all over the years just kind of flowed over a time span. I mean, I never wrote them that way. I never thought about any of putting it all together. I've always separated poetry from stories, from novels to short stories, and this just came together, and I thought it was my challenge to myself to finish it, to edit everything, make sure it all flowed nicely. And after I got done with the funeral and the brunch afterwards, I came home, and you had to have it done by 12 o'clock midnight. You had to have it in, and I think I got it like at 11:32. Sent it off, and whether it wins, whether it comes in, whether it doesn't quite matter as much as I actually did it, and I was proud of the work that it was. I think it was very interesting because it starts actually before I was born with the death of my grandfather, because if my maternal grandfather hadn't died stupidly, I probably wouldn't be here today. And so it starts off with that, and it ends with being born, and then it goes on with other things as we go along to present day, pretty much. And I don't know, it just doing that was healing.
Yeah,
Not having my family around anymore is healing. I don't hear from anybody in my adopted family anymore at all. Haven't heard from most of them in years. Only one of them came to the funeral,
yeah,
um, which I had to take care of. I took care of her, so I took care of everything else. And I don't know, I just feel like everything I couldn't really stop and take time for myself, I now have.
yeah,
So whatever I'm gonna do from now until the end is all on me, and you
yeah.
know, um, I don't know, just
So,
freeing and liberating somehow. It is a form of healing, as
but
you
I
would
was
put
going to
it.
say, I was going to
Yeah,
say before you said freedom, I was going to say, so healing is freedom to you.
it is, because I never had it before. All of life was dictated by family. I swear I could never move far enough away from them to have my own life, make my own decisions, do my own thing when I wanted, what I wanted. I couldn't, it was hard to be allowed to go out there and make my own mistakes because someone was always grabbing me by the collar and saying, no, you can't do that. And it took so much of me. And with my parents, I didn't quite, I think we talked about before, I didn't quite realize I was gay until in my 20s, but I was quite the butch little kid. I mean, I liked doing all the boys' toys and games, and I really enjoyed woodworking and and my mother hated it. I was supposed to be the cutesy little girl with the frilly skirts and all, the whole 9 yards, and unless she needed something fixed in the house, and then it was okay, because my father wasn't the handy guy, so it was up to me. I fixed more things in that house so they didn't have to call anybody. If I got stuck, I'd call an uncle. He'd come
Yeah,
over. He'd yell at my mother and say, buy her the right tools and she'll get it done and you won't have to bother me again.
yeah.
That's,
But the double standards must have been really, the double standard on that must have been really,
it was crazy.
yeah, crazy.
It was what I was good at wasn't appreciated unless they needed something. Otherwise, I wasn't supposed to, it was just supposed to go away. I don't know.
Yeah,
It was, and all of their lives were double standards. I hated going to church because I watched all of them in church on a Sunday, and the minute they left, they were right back to, they were the most bigoted folks out there. And just a double standard of you practice what you preach. There was never any of that. It was always, it's, you're here because I wanted you here and you're going to do what I tell you to do.
yeah.
That was always, yeah.
What? Because
So,
you were raised a Catholic, right?
yes.
And there's from what I wasn't raised in any particular way. I went to a school that had a bit of religion going on, but
Mhm.
it was Protestant religion, and we were singing a hymn and listening to a reading, and that was about the extent of it. But the from what I've heard, there's guilt seems to be a very central theme and
Guilt
guilt
and
and shame.
shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the Catholic thing. And I think what part of it too was when I was really young, Mass was in Latin, which I didn't understand. So I got dragged. I had no clue what they were saying. All it was to me was a show because that's what I understood is what was going on visually because I didn't understand the Latin of it. And then when Vatican II came along, they said, in your natural language, well, theirs was Polish. Didn't know much of that either. So it was always just a show to me. And I could pick out, the things that just looked like it was a production and what wasn't. And it always looked more production than anything. And I just got dragged along until I was old enough to say, I'm not doing this anymore. So
Have you got any take on how the guilt thing and shame thing was doubled up? You've got Catholic guilt and shame, which is
mhm,
which is a spine, a theme that runs through for everybody in
mhm.
the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
Um, and then you put adoption is a put adoption on top of that.
Mhm.
Is I would guess it turbocharges the guilt and shame, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And it causes a lot of self-hate, really, because you've got the guilt and shame, your mother, it was always your biological mother, not so much a whore, but she was loose and she had to give you away because she couldn't keep you because of that. And um so you start with that, and she didn't want you, whether she did or not, it didn't matter. It was always she didn't want you. You should be lucky you have us. And so there was a lot of that on top of that, and anything that resembled anything different from what they were got lumped onto being my biological family. So,
Do you
it
remember?
was, go ahead.
Do you remember seeing through that for the first time?
I think I saw through it pretty early but there's no way out of it. There was only putting up with it. Where are you going to go? I was an only child. There was no place to go. I remember wishing my mother, I could find her and I could go back. At one point, when my mother was saying, if you don't behave, I'm going to send you back. She had said that just one too many times. And I just got right in her face and said, do it. I'm sick and tired of hearing it. Just do it. She can't be any worse than you. And I sat on my bed and I waited. Didn't move. I said, did you find her yet? I'm ready. Because I just wanted out. You can only take so much of being put down for people you don't even know. For parts of you, you don't even know. And there's parts of you don't even think about because you're not allowed to go beyond that surface level with their Catholic craziness. I would call it that. Don't want to offend any of your Catholic followers, but it was that way in my house. And part of it, there was part of it where I think most of my mother's family were narcissists because most of us cousins all kind of got treated the same to a certain extent. There was one aunt that was worse than my mother. There were others and the brothers, and we all got it pretty much evenly. I got it more because I was adopted, but we all got it pretty much across the board. So on that note, we sort of all survived. And I noticed that they sort of have become like their parents, which is sad, what little I've seen of them. Um, I don't know. I just don't have, I'm away from that. Don't want to go back to that.
Do- Does
Let's,
you were stuck with that dogma? There was no
yeah.
escape for you.
And plus the Catholic school part. So, and we
Yeah,
had nuns who were very strict
yeah.
with
Did
the
did did
paddle.
seeing, did seeing through the hypocrisy and was that freeing at all? Obviously, it's not freeing physically because you're still going to the same school, but
Right.
did seeing through the belief systems that they were trying to impose on you, did that was that in any way freeing? Or
It was to an extent, but you still had to go through the motions because, we went to a Catholic school, which meant going to mass once a week, having to go to confession once a month. And it was like, I didn't believe in any of that. I mean, it was beyond me. So you have to go through the motions, or somebody's going to call your mother and say there's something wrong with your kid. She's not behaving in church, and then you're going to get it afterwards, physical punishment. So there was two stories that have always stuck out brightly in my mind. One was a confession. I used to just make stuff up because I didn't know what they wanted to hear. So I'd go in there and I would make stuff up. And there was one priest, he was a little off center. And I got stuck in his line that month and he screamed. I mean, we're talking a big church. Sound reverberates everywhere. And eventually you have to walk out of that confessional and everybody knows it was you he was yelling at. It was I just wanted to run away at that point because, not believing and then getting yelled at for that. I'm not even sure what he was yelling about. I don't remember saying anything to him, that was anything that big of a deal. So that was one. And the other was the year I went from third grade to fourth grade. One of my aunts was a nun, and she taught fourth grade in the school where I was. I spent all summer agonizing over the fact that I was going to have my aunt as my fourth grade teacher, and she'd be calling my mother all the time, going, "Do you know what your daughter did today?" And somewhere around the middle of August, I got great relief. They transferred her somewhere else
yeah,
to another
you
diocese in another part of the state. It was like this huge sigh of relief that at least it wouldn't be someone who knew me who wasn't my mother's sister. You know, it just invaded everything.
so talking about the chains and the external constraints and the 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 yeah the brainwashing and the dogma.
Yeah, they tried their best on that one.
Tried the best on that one. And you talked about, you mentioned self-hate, which is like,
Why can't I ever do anything right? Why can't I ever just do anything? I just want to get through my day. Why does there have to be something that I did that they don't like that I didn't think about beforehand? You know, and it didn't matter what it was. It may have been I left a piece of clothing on the floor, or didn't like the way I made dinner that night, or because I both my parents worked, so I made dinner a lot. Um, it could have been anything, and it was always I could never do anything right. And so I always tended to go farther and farther and farther and farther inside of myself. I tried writing, but my mother would find it everywhere. Anywhere I wrote notebooks, diaries, stories, whatever I wanted when I was younger. She would find it and criticize it as being rubbish, basically. I was never allowed to just have any space of my own. And for a long time, I tried hiding my writing. I would put it in a locked drawer. I would put it under the mattress. I would put it in the closet. She would always find it. There was no privacy in our house. And at some point, I just crawled far enough in where I took my notebooks and a book of matches, went to the park and lit them on fire and went home. You know, make sure the fire went out first, but then, yeah, I went home and I didn't write again until I was in college. And I had to keep a journal for 2 courses I was taking. And that was like Panic City because why would I want to open that up? I had spent so much time pushing that down. Why would I want to bring it back up? And I even tried talking to my teacher. I said, is there any other way I can get out of this without doing this journal? He's like, you're gonna pass, you're gonna fail, but you're gonna do it. And that's when I started writing again in college when I was 30.
Yeah.
So it took a long time
So
to just start coming out of where I was.
I was talking to a coach this morning, and she was talking about this idea of thinking as a escape mechanism for feeling.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing a therapist like 8-9 years ago, and we did a few sessions together, and then she gave me this single piece of paper, some notes that she typed up, and it says Simon evades feeling through thinking, by thinking.
Yeah.
And this coach lady reminded me of that fact, which I'd forgotten about reading 8 years ago, whatever it was.
Feeling's dangerous.
Sorry?
Feeling is dangerous. Having feelings is dangerous if you have no way to channel those feelings, because they're only going to be channeled inward. So why not just shut them off and use what you have left, which is rational thinking? I could think about anything. I would not feel it. I didn't feel things like, normal kids did. I never got into the, oh, let me buy my mother a Mother's Day card. Why? I had no feelings for her other than fear and hate because of oppression. I didn't know what love was until I was in my 20s. And that was hard to just let somebody in for that. That was somebody that I wanted to be with. Feelings are dangerous because you're putting yourself out there and you don't know if somebody else is going to just throw it back at you. That's worse than than not having the feelings in the first place. Having it thrown back at you for whatever menial reason. But I could think about I got my undergraduate degree in philosophy. That tells you how much thinking I did. I liked reading, and that's where I got all of my information from. I spent hours in libraries. My father took me to the library every Saturday. I'd bring home stacks of books to read. That was my world. There were no feelings. There was just, okay, let me think about the story I just read And what does it really mean? I mean, it was all mental. There was nothing emotional. So
So,
yeah, I can understand Simon doesn't
well,
feel like.
but I'm laughing too, because it's like that wasn't obvious to me, but it seems like it was really obvious to you.
Yeah.
Like you've
Yeah.
yeah, you've kind of done that. And it was just a throwaway line from this coach I was speaking to this morning. And I'm laboring the point really, just to underline it in case anybody else is late to that insight, right? Because clearly you were early to that insight.
Oh yeah. Early in not knowing what to, I never knew, should I try or not? And I always did not first for a long time until I felt really, really, really comfortable, which took a lot. I mean, I didn't do friends. Friends required you had to have some sort of communication and on some level of feeling sharing. And I didn't do that. I had one friend through grammar school. And when I came out, we talked every once in a while. And when I came out, I figured I would, at that point in my life, it was, this is who I am. So either you like me for who I am or you don't. So my one friend through all of grammar school said, when I came out to her, you're not going to try anything, are you? Yeah. No, get out of my car. Go away.
But it's not just the romantic feelings that are dangerous, though.
They're all, yeah. Especially the anger. If you let it out, sometimes you can't stop it. If you give it permission to express and come out, sometimes it finds rage and it just keeps going more than you want. And you have to end up apologizing in the long run for things you never meant to say or do. I mean, learning how to control that, because there was a lot of anger and rage from, that was one of the few feelings I had. And just learning to control it, because it was always, I learned the best thing I could do when I went home to see my mother or family or anyone was, they'd say, oh, what's new and what's going on? And I flat face, nothing. I don't care if I just won the lottery, nothing. It's just, it was easier to just disengage and just answer whatever, questions they had on a superficial level so I could get the hell out of there. It was never, I didn't want to engage because they always wanted to fix my life the way they wanted it. If I'd said, oh, I had a fight with a friend, well, what did you do wrong? What did you do to cause a friend to be angry with you? You got to go apologize and talk to your friend. No, I don't. That was between me and whoever this other person was, not you. Thanks, I don't need to fix things that are broken that I don't want to fix. If it's broken, I move on. And things just, I mean, it just never changed. There were so many different levels of just, I don't know.
Did you blame yourself for your feelings? Because that's something that I've done.
I did and I didn't. I mean, I did to the, until I could resolve my adoption part of it and realize my birth mother wasn't a bad person and I'm not a bad person either. It was hard. Um, I was angry at her for leaving me with these crazy people because no matter how crazy her life had been, it wouldn't have been as bad as where I
So
ended up.
you were fruit from
That's what I thought.
you were fruit from the poison tree.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was my adopted mother bought into the fact of the blank slate, that I would become whatever she wanted, because I was a little 3-month-old baby when they got me, and you know, she could mold me into whatever she wanted me to be.
So what do you think
I
was
was I was meant to do two things for her: give her grandchildren and take care of her when she got older. She told me that. Those were her two reasons for adopting me. She didn't get the grandkids.
no,
I was never having children after that upbringing. And she got the second part. Whoops,
yeah,
where'd it go?
I can
I
still see
lost you. You can see me,
still,
I can't see you. Where'd
okay,
it? Where are you?
I'm here.
I hear you. I don't see you. We can keep talking.
Yeah.
Um, Connecting. I don't want to write a message. Anyway,
Can I ask you a question on the blank slate thing?
yeah,
So what was on the slate if you weren't a blank slate?
on the slate, that I would be my mother used to dress me up in all these frilly little dresses, usually white or light pink, and the patent leather shoes. And she would spank the hell out of me. Then she'd send me out to play, and I'd come in and be dirty, and she would have a fit. I was just supposed to, it was like almost like she wanted a doll, and I was supposed to be the human doll. And I don't know. And she tried to force me into that space. And the more I tried to back away from that, the more she tried to drag me into it. So, I mean, she wanted this perfect little doll that she could raise and who would become this obedient daughter and would marry the perfect guy and give her grandchildren. At one point, she actually wrote to, I don't know where she got, it was some magazine she got it out of, I don't know. Um, these guys who were looking to date women and get married, most of them from other countries. And she wrote to them. And then when they wrote back, she gave me the letters and said, write them back. Oh, there you are. And I said, you started this, not me. I'm not writing these people, guys from India or Russia or, the Middle East somewhere who were looking for an easy way to citizenship by marrying somebody
Yeah,
in America. No,
I, I,
not ever gonna happen. You started this, you fix it. And
I'm laughing
I
because
threw
Facebook
the
showed.
matter.
I'm laughing because Facebook showed me a picture of wannabe Ukrainian brides this afternoon, and
Oh,
it's the same thing. It's the same
yeah,
thing in a different um,
in the reverse order.
in a different in reverse order,
Yeah.
in a different form, in a new technology. Um, I want to go back to the scary feeling stuff. So, um, how's your relationship with strong feelings now?
I don't actually have that many. I mean, strong feelings as in,
Well, have it seems to me like you're free. You're free now of your.
of that. Yeah. I mean, once I moved out, whether it was a successful relationship with somebody else or not, it was something that I was learning about me. I was becoming more comfortable with me inside of myself. And it took a lot longer. Once I started writing that journal for the college professor, I ended up taking 3 or 4 more courses with him just to keep the journal work going, because he provided a lot of feedback and I just let him have it. I mean, I wrote about everything and anything: adoption, my parents, relationships. He got more than he was bargaining for. And it was always on topic, because he would give us certain topics to focus. And he was one of my philosophy teachers in my major. So he got a lot more than he bargained for, but he found it interesting. He would write me little notes, some in Greek, some in English.
Wow.
And I actually got the license plate of one of those things. The state wouldn't let me have my old license plate back, the specialty plate that I had for 30 years. So I got a new one and they approved it. The state of New York is just nuts. They approved it in like less than a day. And it's in Greek. It's Spodias. I could only use 8 out of the 9 characters that spells it correctly, but Spodias in Greek is serious. Figured if I use the English word serious, they're going to give me, what do you mean by that? So I used the Greek word Spodias, which he always used to tell me. He would write things that I was a very serious person, and I was always, throughout all of school, I was always a good essay writer. The teacher would give you this 10-page essay to write, and I was really good at because it was all mental. I could write on any topic, I could research it, I could give you the best, 10, 20. In graduate school, it was supposed to be a 30-page paper. Mine was 50, because I put in diagrams, my own diagrams, which it was in linguistics, so it was doing linguistic diagramming and everything. I could do that until the cows came home. But if you asked me to talk about how I felt, I couldn't do that, because I didn't feel it. It took a long time to do that. And once I started doing that with the journaling again, it unleashed this floodgate. And I continued journaling even after, and a lot of my stories that I wrote, I did, 4 years ago, I was in a car accident and I ended up with a concussion and a few injuries, and I hit my rock bottom for depression. So I actually got a referral to do some counseling. And when we were talking about all of the writing that I do. And most of what our sessions were, when we wanted to talk about feelings, were all of my characters. Because that's where I put all of my feelings, into all of my characters. I got to play with their emotions where it was safe. They got to do the feeling, and then, what would be the consequence of something coming back on them? How would I do this? What was my idea of what I wanted? And I would play it out in characters, in different scenarios, in different stories. And that was the most freeing thing, because then I could just start transferring some of the stories to me and condensing parts of characters into me, to be able to put that out in a way of feeling that I was actually having feelings other than just rage. And, I didn't have to put holes in the wall anymore when I was punching. And now that, to bring it back, now that I'm no longer the family caretaker anymore, or have nothing to do with family anymore, it's like, now I can just be whoever I want. And that's okay. When we had my aunt's funeral at church, I said to my spouse, I said, I'm betting the same people who are at our wedding are going to be the same people who are here to say goodbye to my Aunt Jane. Not related supposed family, but the family that we had built together. And I was right. They were all there. We all got together afterwards. They all went to the cemetery with us. It was like my family that I had built came to support me and to say goodbye, because they knew her, because she came to all of our holiday dinners until she was too old to, participate anymore. Um, and that was a big thing for me, to know this is my family, no matter what anybody else says. Just because you're related to me by legal whatever, from adoption, or by blood through um, biological family, you're not my family. You don't interact with me. You don't cherish the stories I'm telling you. You throw them back at me. I don't need that anymore. I can free myself from all of that. I mean, taking care of my aunt's funeral was the last time I will ever go in a Catholic church. I'm done with that. I am pagan. I enjoy, I'm very earth centered. I like playing in my garden. It's very relaxing. It helps me ground myself in working with the dirt and raising flowers and working with animals. I have all of my critters. One was over here a few minutes ago wanting attention. They're my world, my everyday world. And that's okay, because I still have my stories and my characters. you know, they're my friends, I guess. I don't know. We talk to the cats a lot about my imaginary friends. My mother always worried I had imaginary friends, that I wouldn't have real friends, and well, I really didn't. But my imaginary friends were real enough to me, and they were good enough for me because they were safe. I didn't have to worry about what they thought. They were going to think what I told them to think, and that was freeing in its own way.
And they were
Does
safe.
that make sense?
They were
Yeah,
safe.
they were safe. They weren't going to, yell and scream at you or try to tear you down.
Yeah.
I see you deep in thought.
Yeah. There's so much here, isn't there? There's so much here. There's so much about the cathartic nature of
Yeah.
writing. So much here about the um, thinking to avoid feeling. There's so much more about putting feelings into the characters, so that presumably those characters can explode, and you don't explode any.
Right. Right. And to actually, when I worked with my counselor, one of the things, she would always ask me which characters I was working on and what was going on in their life, so that I could bring it out in another way, which was very cathartic for me. And so much my characters didn't quite explode the way I would have. They were more of trying to find another way to work around what was a proper way of response other than going boom. Because I already had that in real life. I could go boom pretty easy. Um, it was finding that mental process of having a conversations with characters, one or two, or sometimes just self thought of a character playing out scenarios of what they were going to do with, when they met somebody else or was going out to do something. And it was always it was usually a long process. I mean, I would play with characters for hours and days on end and play out various things, and it wasn't always with a pen and paper. Sometimes it was just mentally daydreaming it, and how to work out and solve the problem so that they didn't go boom, so that they had a better relationship with in their life than what I had, and to see if I could take some of what I created in them and play it out in my
Yeah.
world.
Have you heard of some people call it parts work, and some people call it internal family systems, and it's a type of therapy. Have you come across this?
I have not, but it sounds kind of like what I'm doing, sort of, kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
without the therapist.
yeah. So the guy that the guy that founded this thing, internal family systems, also known as parts work, is a guy called Richard Schwartz. He goes as Dick Schwartz, and I listened to one of his books, and it's called No Bad Parts, and the title kind of says it all for me.
Yeah.
So it's about loving every part of you. It's about loving even the angry part. It looks
Yeah.
it's about, and that for me relates to that question that I asked earlier on, which was, like, did you? I can't remember how I said it. Do you accept your own emotions, because do you criticize your own emotions? So I would be angry about being angry, which is the
Oh,
opposite,
I see. I see.
which is the exactly the opposite of Dick Schwartz's appeal, which would be to love the angry part of you, of us.
I I I I actually like that idea of the patchwork, because I sort of see that as what I have been doing. And so many times, when I talked with other adoptees, they would always say, hug your inner child. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't even know how to find my inner child. That was not a helpful way for me to do something. So I guess finding my inner child went through my characters. It was, I picked names that I liked, and because I'd never liked, I've had too many names in my life. My birth name, my adopted name, and none of them meant anything. My birth name was because they wouldn't let my birth mother leave the hospital without naming me, in case I didn't get adopted. I had a name, first and last. And then, my adopted parents changed that. Well, at least the first name. They didn't like to name, because my mother didn't like nicknames. She was a stickler for that. I don't understand, because she gave me a name that has more nicknames than I know what to do with. I like AJ. It's nice and short. um, but it's letting the character be angry, and not being angry with the character. It's letting that out. And what happens after, when the exhaustion comes in? What do you do with that? How do you handle getting back up again? That was a big thing for, and deciding how you're not going to do something again, and how you're going to change something, how you're going to change things so they work out differently in another time. And just working on that. It's not being angry with the angry. It's more being detached from. The feeling isn't there. The feeling is given to somebody else. And you want to see how they're going to do it based on what how people, respond in certain situations, how you've observed that, how they're going to respond, and how you can learn from what they do, and how you want something to change, and figure out, with a great deal of, you know, of a big, very big eraser to change, things in your character to work out the way you want it to work out, the way you want it to feel, instead of what it is, so that you can change it in yourself.
Yeah. Can I go back to that blank slate?
Okay.
Because I'm just floating an idea here.
Okay.
And so my question, I think, was so we're not blank slates.
We're not, no. But that's what they, in
They thought that.
Yeah, they thought that, and the adoption agencies really pushed that. I mean, I was nothing like my adopted parents. There's always those stories of you want you're the chosen child. Well, why, my parents were olive skin, dark hair, dark eyes. I had green eyes and bright red hair and freckles. I look nothing like them. Why would you, if you had a choice of all these, the chosen baby story, if you had the choice of all the children in the nursery, why did you pick me? Because I'm nothing like you. How did you think you could make me something that I'm not? That's what I always wonder. There's been so many crazy ideas. The blank slate, the chosen child. That you should be grateful for, so many non-adopted people look at you and go, what's wrong with you? They wanted you, you're special. No, I wish I were adopted. No, you don't. They don't see adoption for what it is. They just look at, they think you're getting so much more than they are, and that your life is so much better than theirs is. And I always looked at their life as, but you know who you are. You know where you came from. Your mother is your mother. You have this relationship with her. I don't know my identity other than what people are trying to force on me. So yeah, the blank slate never quite worked. And I paid the price for that steeply. She thought that she could make me what she wanted, that she wanted everything her siblings had. All of her siblings had children of their own. And that's what she wanted and couldn't have because she was infertile. She had 3 miscarriages. And yeah, I was never going to be that. And she just wouldn't give it up.
Yeah. Very
Ever.
determined. Yeah.
So now there's,
You said at the top of the interview, my life is mine.
It is. It's mine now. Me and my wife, that's it. And our cats and dogs and her sisters, my in-laws, nieces, nephews. We all get along. We all, there's just, come on over, we're having dinner, let's do this. We're going camping, come on out, and we're all camp together. And it's just more family. When I went to my mother-in-law's funeral, they're Baptists. I got quite the eye-opener about a Baptist, Black Baptist funeral. It was the biggest celebration of a life I ever saw. And they celebrated her. It wasn't, we're going to pray over your dead body now so you don't go to hell. You're going to go with the angels. And, no, they celebrated her life and how they were going to miss her and how much she contributed to their life. It was like so different. It was upbeat and uplifting versus, I don't even know, smells and bells, and just the ritual of, they're gone now. In this view, they're not totally gone now. They're still with you because they were always with you during your life. So they are with you now. You still have the memories, the good memories of what happened with them. It didn't happen over here in Catholic world. So that really gave me quite the huge eye opener.
Right. Yeah.
So it was interesting.
So hopefully we've opened some eyes today.
I would hope so. I hope there's, I know I can't be the only one out there who, I know some people who went through a lot worse than I did. I got the emotional and some physical abuse, but there's a lot of other adoptees out there, who had the sexual abuse as well growing up, and I don't envy them that. I don't know. Here's one for you to think about. I'm chatting with one adoptee in one of the forums I'm on. We're trying to work out a little article to put on our front page of our website. And it's called The Moon People. And a lot of adoptees have always felt that because we never had our first chapter of knowing our identity, that it's almost like sometimes we feel like we were just dropped off by aliens with no past, just going forward, being taken in and made into what passes. And he said when the astronauts went to the moon, when Buzz Aldrin came back home, there was nobody he could share that experience with that would understand what it meant to have gone through all of that to get to the moon and on the moon and back. And all he saw and didn't see in the darkness of space, except other astronauts. And so he said, the only people I can relate to truly are other moon people. And I think that's the same for adoptees. The only ones that we can really relate to are other adoptees. We know what everybody pretty much has gone through. The good, the bad, the indifferent. I mean, there are a lot of people who join our forum, who, come in and say, "Hey, I had a great adoption. My parents were really great." It's like, well, okay, then why are you here? We're here to work on issues. If you had a great life, yeah, but I've got problems with, I don't feel like I belong here and there. Okay, well then, you have to reconcile your how great was, you can have the greatest adopted family, but you're still the adopted child who's always treated differently. You're not the same as everybody else. I was supposed to be like my cousin who was a year and 4 days older than me. And it was always, why can't you do things like her? Why can't you do, why do you have to play baseball? Why can't you be the little pretty cheerleader? I liked sports. Sorry. But it was always that comparison. It was always, and nobody understands that like another adoptee. You Yes, you have to do a lot of your healing on your own, but you can do a lot of healing and helping other people heal by just affirming you know what they're feeling. You can honestly say you know what they're feeling, and you can talk about those feelings as deeply or as superficially as you want to, and that's okay. You're going to go deeper when you're ready. If all you can do is talk to superficial and angry now, get it out. Get it out until it isn't there anymore, and just keep getting it out. And eventually you start moving over to exploring what that anger is about and exploring what all of those feelings are about, of never being enough, of always feeling outside, looking in. And, you know, I find a lot of brothers and sisters, our moon people, you know. I'm there for them, they're there for me. And they're within that sacred space that nobody else can invade. We grow and we deal with our lives, our children, our spouses, our divorces, our, you know, everything that we deal with in everyday life, and how it's compounded by feeling like we were abandoned and thrown away and not wanted, and all of it. And we help each other through those, and sometimes we just finally come out on the other side a little more whole than we were when we started. I think for me, that's healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, AJ.
Thank you. It's been fun. I always like talking with you.
I love talking with you too.
Okay, great.
Listeners, check out the show notes, and there's a link to AJ's previous interview and all her socials and the website and stuff like that. You can find out what she's working on now, what she's written. And until next time, we'll see you all very soon. Take care. Bye bye.